Welcome back to Whovo Review. I am Farrar, and I'm joined by two cohorts. One of them a regular, Lewis.
Hey there.
And one of them we haven't heard from since last season, Anna.
Hey.
Who helped us review Kill the Moon.
I'm still alive.
Still alive, still kicking. There's a lot of good and a lot of bad about this episode.
Yeah.
One of the things that I liked about it was the fact that it reminded me a little bit of Old Who, in that they took words that people like to use and made them mean something different in the Doctor Who universe.
Okay.
Like retcon is a word that people are throwing around a lot. And
True, although I think they inherited that from Torchwood.
Well, that's true. I mean, I'm not saying it's brand new.
I feel like it still had a similar meaning.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's a physical object now. It's a drug that affects your brain.
Right.
Which is really cool. Personally, I'm waiting for the continuation of that. I'm waiting for like a really rare element called handwavium. And there was kind of a blending between science fiction, adventure, and fantasy.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people were saying they ripped off the concept of the hidden street from Harry Potter. But they kind of name-checked that by saying, trap streets have been a thing for a long time. It was one of those things where you think you see one thing and it's actually another thing. That was another kind of cool thing that they threw out there, and I thought it was really creative.
Yeah, and
They
if you
hit
give me
it
a second,
very well.
there's something else that I really think they ripped off, which was the countdown until you die. Apparently, the countdown until you die is from the movie In Time from 2011, and not a lot of people saw that, but perhaps the writer of this episode saw it.
I did not see that movie, but maybe Riggsy did, because one of the things that I thought was kind of strange dialogue-wise was he said, the number is counting down.
Right.
And I thought, okay, we know that. And then he said, it's counting down to 0. And I thought, well, wait a minute. How do you know it's counting down to 0? It's still at 500 something.
Right.
Again, little dialogue things in this
one
episode.
One would assume that the watch would stop at 0. What happens when it hits negatives, then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, or it would kill you when you got to 58.
That wouldn't happen
entirely
either.
arbitrary.
Or what if it works in stages? You hit 500, something happens. You hit 400, something else happens. You hit 300,
You get a bonus round.
At which point it would just be cancer.
Yeah.
Right.
Personally, I was thinking he's just going to turn back into a pumpkin, like in Cinderella. But
Or he gets an upgrade, an extra arm.
Sure, or that's
with
when
a
he gets
spray
absorbed
can in
into
it
the
so that he
wall,
can,
because that was the episode he came from.
yeah, there you go.
Right.
He counts down and he gets sucked into his own paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That's just it. I didn't get a tattoo and it's counting down.
To me, this episode seemed contrived and drawn out, very much with the writer's hand in evidence, and I hate that.
It felt to me like they wanted a 2-part finale to the season to get rid of Clara, and they stretched it to a 3-parter, and this is part 1. Because the whole scheme that Ashildr had come up with to lure the Doctor there made no sense whatsoever.
Right.
It was completely convoluted. She knew that he was looking for her. So why set that incredibly elaborate trap and put someone else's life in danger?
Yeah, it's silly. I didn't really like the mystical tone of Ashildr's contract with the what?
Them, they?
Whatever.
Yeah, just they.
Well, the theory is that it's the rest of the Time Lords.
I guess I could buy that.
A lot of people are speculating that the coming hybrid that we were foretold of is, in fact, Clara, and that what we've seen is a splinter of Clara, that she's not really dead.
I think they dropped that. They dropped the Splinters of Clara thing.
No one's mentioned it in 2 years.
Yeah, 2 seasons ago. That's dead.
Yeah, I think that's gone.
I think that joins to itself in a loop, and it doesn't impinge on the rest of her companionship. But
Yeah.
honestly, once again, once that thread was done, there wasn't any real reason for her to continue. They should have dropped her and hired somebody else. It didn't make any sense to me. It's like they reinvented her as a new character.
They did. They reinvented Clara as an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
And just in case we had forgotten about that, they had
Right.
the incredibly long dangling over London scene where she says "woo" about 8 times too many.
Yeah, it was great looking. But yeah, talk about
bit of an
driving the point
ongoing
home
problem.
with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, I mean, we get it. Okay, we
Right.
get it.
She has gotten to the point where she automatically assumes the doctor is simply going to step in and save her. Mm-hmm. You know, she's relying on that
Right.
constantly. And it's annoying.
And we saw it when she planned to take the chrono lock.
Right.
She basically said flat out, "No worries." You
right.
know,
Never any worries.
Yeah, and that brings up kind of a, is this kind of a Greek tragedy thing? Is she being punished for hubris?
The doctor certainly was offended, you know. He had to point out to her that he's a little less delicate than she is. So,
Yeah, and I think that's the second time he said something about that.
Yeah.
That humans are more fragile than Time Lords. And even Missy said it in the opening season. You know,
Yeah.
death is for other people.
That's just it. Yesterday was a total blank.
I think the problem that I have with Clara dying is that it didn't feel like death, because the past 2 seasons have been death isn't what you think it is, and people come back.
right.
And so after Clara's 8-minute farewell speech,
Yeah. Yeah, that took forever.
they
It was brilliant, though.
good speech. Hey, at least she didn't say "Run, you clever boy," and remember.
Yeah.
Right. I agree.
And even after the done to death television trope of the silent scream and watching her die 3 times in slow motion 3 times, we really needed that. I couldn't feel like she was dead. They're going to pull the rug out from under us in the next episode,
Right.
Or in the season finale, and Clara's going to be back.
Yeah, maybe I'm too old and cynical too, but that didn't emotionally connect for me at all. Really.
If she is gone, that was an excellent farewell for her.
Yeah, I guess. Although the word is that we're going to see her again at the end of the season, but in what form? Who knows? You know?
Well, there are so many ways now. We've
Yeah.
got gangers, we've got data ghosts,
Right.
We've got the Matrix slice, you know, where Danny continued to live after he died
Yeah.
for a while.
Or they could even pull the horrible, oh, well, that was the Zygon, Clara.
It's not beyond the realm of
No.
possibility.
Except I thought the Zygon Clara then became the other.
Right. Well, that was a Zygon, Clara, wasn't it? I mean,
That's
how many
fair.
Zygons can you make out of one person? They didn't actually answer that either. So,
Yeah. Jenna Coleman irritated me in this episode because Clara's accent kept changing. 1 minute it was whatever, the next minute it was whatever.
yeah, right.
1 minute she was talking about us, and the next minute she's talking about us. You really want this to be your last episode with your characterization just all over the place?
Maybe she's brushing up on the Queen's English for her next role.
You got me. I honestly don't know. Of course, if Paul were here, he would say this is a clue to the fact that she was not the real Clara, and what we actually saw die was just an illusion, a hologram, because the
Maybe
perception
it's one of
filter.
the splinters.
I wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah. Right?
That's the problem. That's why I
anything-
can't believe she's dead.
I can't put anything past them anymore.
Okay, so why don't I remember anything?
You've been retconned.
There was an awful lot of this episode that seemed to be sort of running in loops and eating up the clock.
Yeah. It was a lot of character stuff stuffed into a sort of a plot. The plot wasn't enough for 45 minutes.
Well, like the map.
I think it was a reference to Paper Towns.
They had to get a map and then they had to make their own map. But what actually worked was when Riggsy's phone was repaired and he dropped it and he had a memory flash.
right.
Yeah.
So they didn't need the map at all.
They couldn't have counted on a memory flash.
No, but you see what he's saying? It's the
Yeah.
writer's hand showing.
Yeah.
Her hand showed in basically padding something out. You know, it's like, this is supposed to be interesting.
And we
But
needed to see
in the
Clara
end, it's-
dangling from
right.
the TARDIS.
Exactly. In the end, it's just eating up time. It's kind of like the airliners all coming to a halt simultaneously in the beginning episode of the season. That didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It didn't go anywhere. It was just eating up time with something cool happening.
Well, Doctor Who has become kind of a visual feast.
Yeah.
And that's both good and bad.
Yeah.
You know, it's good if you can bolster a story with great visuals.
It's not written like a stage play anymore.
Well,
It
no.
I feel
used
like
to
it's
be.
also pandering to the new viewers that joined with the David Tennant and the Matt Smith era.
Well, I mean, in a way, you could say it's pandering to anybody who's been watching ever since 2005.
Sure.
You know,
You mean stylistically? You mean the way it looks?
Yes, because the new viewers that joined, they didn't join knowing that this was supposed to be like some cheesy show, like the old Who. people that's been around for centuries, like, we know things are made of styrofoam and we don't care.
Right.
New viewers want all of the cinematographics.
Oh, sure. And it's more of an action show now and a soap opera, as well as being a science fiction story. But,
It's like fantasy adventure now.
yeah.
Especially with, why were they on an 18th century street? Why was it a raven? Because it looks cool.
Right.
Because it fits the motif.
There's a bit of Poe there.
And the,
Yeah.
and the hidden alley borrowed from Harry Potter, which
Right.
was a very
Sure.
recognizable thing, and it's cool, and kids can recognize it.
And
They
the
can-
budget-saving touch of having everybody disguised as humans, except for the Janus people. I don't know. What was that all about? They weren't disguised?
I couldn't understand that either, because the way they explained the perception filter, you see what you expect to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so they were expecting to see humans. So why did they see the Janus folks as not human?
You keep wanting to say Janus Thorne, I can tell.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense. The other part, like I said, smacked to me of budget-saving device. Oh, look, there's a Centauran. We'll just flash a couple of frames of a Centauran mug over his portly frame and say that was supposed to be a disguised Centauran.
We've
Below-
never seen a Centauran that tall.
Right, right. And then that poor bloke who gets killed is an example of the
Yeah.
chronolock. There's a crack about him having been a Cyberman.
I went back and I listened to those lines very carefully.
Okay.
And she says, would a Cyberman be afraid of a painless death? Does that mean that he's a Cyberman, or does that mean that this is a deterrent? Because they have Cybermen among them. But then again, why would a Cyberman fear any death?
You know,
Cybermen have no fear.
Yeah, and also,
The Cybermen wouldn't have ran.
Right.
Yeah.
for starters, I can't see a Cyberman running. And second off,
Falling in love and having a wife?
Yeah,
right, I also
probably
can't
not.
see a Cyberman fitting in to that kind of little secluded society like that. It doesn't make any sense at all, knowing what we know about them. They're networked beings, you
Right.
know? That's
And-
stupid.
And yet we saw one getting a haircut.
I mean, what's next? Is there a Dalek mucking about on that street too?
Presumably.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I didn't really understand the fact that there were these things that we heard and then things that we saw. You know, we were told that this was a very peaceful place and they had no trouble at all.
Right.
And then we heard people being very suspicious and hateful and spiteful towards the accused murderer.
Right.
Whose evidence in the case was entirely circumstantial.
Exactly. Right. That was not well developed.
If
it
you
was
folks-
not a proper mystery.
Right. It was not a proper mystery. It was not a proper legal case.
Right.
If we have aliens from very advanced civilizations, surely they have their own justice systems that are more advanced than Ishilder's
Right.
and would say, this is not correct.
Right. Unless
We need evidence.
Right. Unless the whole thing is peace through terror. Is she really kind of holding them all hostage on that street in a state of peace? That doesn't really pan out, does it?
But they're called refugees. And the
Right.
last time we saw her, she said, I'm going to take care of the people you left behind.
yeah.
Not sure what that
Are they
means.
trying to push a hatred of the humans to all of the aliens in that area?
Yeah, it seemed like they were suspicious of muggles.
Right. What's next? We're going to go sonic screwdriver shopping.
Uh-huh. Yeah, right.
The screwdriver chooses the Time Lord,
Oh, dear.
Doctor.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did not like this episode. I really thought that there were way too many little convenient borrows from everything in sight. And nothing made sense. Nothing hung together. It was all excuses for the plot to advance.
Well, and even the thing with the key. Why did they need a key? Even she said, I don't want your TARDIS.
Right.
And if it was supposed to be some sort of special Time Lord key that only the Doctor would recognize, why did it look like an ordinary lock?
Yeah. Yeah, that was bad.
I mean, was that something that they were supposed to fix in post? Or what? I don't get
I
it.
do think it's to keep him from getting back to the TARDIS.
So
'Cause
when
if he has the key, can't he bring the TARDIS back to him wherever he is?
Is that how it works?
I thought we had seen that in a previous episode.
I don't remember. You may be right.
There is supposedly a missing scene that was cut for time. Yeah, I know. It's amazing to think that anything in this episode was cut for time. But apparently it was cut for time when the Doctor comes back into the room, having seen Clara die. The Doctor told Rigsy to take care of Clara's body, bring it back to her parents, and convinced Ishilder not to wipe Rigsy's memory so that he could do that. So that Rigsy could take Clara back to her parents.
Nice little bit of closure.
Yeah, a little bit. but not quite enough.
Yeah.
Because what does he say she died of?
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't.
So I can understand why they cut it, because it's not really necessary. It answers some questions, but then opens others.
There's no nice way to say you're about to die.
What?
There was a theory that part of it was political, like bringing over the whole idea of the refugees.
Oh, like in the Zygon invasion?
No, like from what's currently happening.
Oh.
No, I mean like they did in that episode.
Oh, sort of.
Because in that
But not
episode, we
really.
were really beat over the head with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, here you have this whole camp of people that are trying to just stay hidden and try to, make sure that they're okay by keeping everybody else out. I mean, maybe it's kind of their way of saying, like, yeah, we should probably be taking care of our people, even though they're not our people, because they're still people.
I tell you what, though, that's pretty prescient of them, considering that hot button topic was not quite a hot button topic a year ago when this was all written. So,
But it might be why things are feeling a little time-lapse, like maybe they tried to rush in a current issue at the moment.
My God, a whole London street just up and disappeared, and you'll all assume it's a copyright infringement.
I'd like to know what people who liked this episode liked about it, other
They-
than the courageous speech.
A lot of folks really have praised Capaldi for his characterization in this episode.
Yeah, okay.
Because he didn't get overly emotional like number 10 and 11 would have done.
Right.
Tennant and Smith's doctor would have been much more, oh, I'm so sorry, going to cry.
Yeah.
Capaldi's take was much more nuanced.
It's a lot darker.
Yeah, in the close-ups of his face, he looked almost like Hugh Laurie playing Dr. House when you see that shadow of regret cross his face. It's very subtle. And you can see Capaldi's eyes start to tense up and water over, but he doesn't cry. And you can see the tension in his face. His eyebrows begin to sort of tighten together. It's all very, very subtle,
Yeah.
which is interesting because he's playing a good balance between the human reaction, the emotions that he's been exposed to, and he's kind of taking in by osmosis, and the alien that he was most definitely playing
Yeah.
before when he rejected human emotions and thought they were weird and icky.
Yeah, I think he's been doing a great job all season. I've got nothing bad to say about him.
A lot of folks really liked Maisie Williams in this episode.
Yeah.
I thought she did a really good job with what she was given.
Yeah.
There were a couple of lines where I thought her delivery was really kind of odd, but then again, her character is kind of odd.
She's a very estranged character.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing about her character is she's almost like a Time Lord. Like every time we see her, she's a different person.
Right.
Because
right.
she's acquired a new set of memories.
Right, she doesn't have the Time Lord mind.
Yeah.
Right.
Depending on what time period we see her in, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th century, she could be an entirely different person. What we know of her has been buffered out, and she's got a whole new set of memories, and everything else is just a history book to her. So in a way, Maisie Williams is playing the same character, but in a way, she's not. Every time we see her, she's playing someone different.
Yeah.
Which is a
her
real
character.
challenge.
I like her character a lot. I think she's the probably most intriguing thing that they've come up with this season.
Yeah, and I especially like the fact that she's got a lot of shade to her character.
Yeah.
She's neither 100% good nor 100% bad. Although this plan of hers was kind of diabolical, she never meant for anyone to get hurt. When it goes wrong at the end and she sees that the tutu has been transferred, she's genuinely shocked and surprised and confused. Doesn't know what to do at that point because she knows that you can do two things with that. You can either transfer it or you can rescind it. You can't have both.
Yeah. The fact that it can be transferred also seems incredibly arbitrary to me.
It did have to be a willing transfer on both ends.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that's what it is.
in
Yeah.
what other society can you take on someone else's death sentence?
Right. Does that make any sense at all in a
None.
legal sense? No.
It has nothing to do with justice.
No, none at
No.
all. It's very arbitrary. And
And yet she said she was most concerned with justice and
Yeah,
keeping to the
it
rule of
doesn't-
law in order to keep her community.
it doesn't pan out.
Together.
Apparently, her way of handling crime in Diagon's Alley is just a bunch of made-up rules that conveniently fit the plot. That's what really offends me about this whole thing.
Yeah, there were an awful lot of things which were just convenience for the plot.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this episode falls down for me. It was entertaining. Certainly as the first part of a three-parter, I thought it was pretty good. But we're off to a really slow start.
First part of a 3-parter. Okay, so this unites with the last 2 episodes. And
I'm going to assume so.
Okay.
I mean, because it said to be continued, and would they honestly do a 2-parter and then a 1-part season finale?
Yeah, no.
I think we've got a trilogy happening.
Yeah, I think the titles of the last 2 kind of are a tip-off, too, that they're united. So
Yeah, what's the next one? Hellbent?
Heaven Sent.
Heaven Sent.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So does that mean that the Doctor is going to be Orpheus?
Yeah, a lot of people are speculating like, oh, so Clara's hanging out with Danny now. But that doesn't really track either because he's no longer in a Gallifreyan hard drive. He's sacrificed himself.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing we heard from him was, we're here, but we're fading fast.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the only person they could put through was the kid that he killed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what happened to him?
No idea.
I sure hope Clara wasn't supposed to take care of him because she's dead now.
Infinite lifespan, finite memory. It makes for an awkward social life.
By the way, kudos to whoever came up with quantum shade.
Oh.
Quantum, very tiny. Shade, an absence of light. And what did we see? We saw little tiny black particles.
That's cool, but I thought it was a little too mystical for Doctor Who.
Oh, this episode was very magical.
There was, right.
I mean,
It
she
was
talks about giving them a soul.
a soul. I was about to bring that up.
But what is a soul in
Right.
science fiction?
Nah.
What is a soul in the Doctor Who universe? Or is it just a convenient word, like a ship sinks in the ocean and somebody gives a press conference and says there were 85 souls on board.
Right.
Like they did in Battlestar Galactica.
Sure.
Where they called people souls.
Right.
Is it linguistic shorthand, or is this an actual thing in Doctor Who now where we have bodies and we have souls?
Or is it possible that this perhaps started as a Harry Potter fanfic and then got adapted?
Honestly, the worst stories of the last couple of seasons of Doctor Who have seemed like fan fiction, haven't they? Yeah. Like bad fan fiction.
Yeah.
I gotta say, though, this was the 10th episode?
Yeah.
And overall, this season has been pretty solid.
This season's been great. I hope they can hold it up for the end. I really hope that the end they can stick the landing because they've got a lot to live up to. Honestly, the Zygon inversion and invasion was another all-time classic as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Very hard to pick that one apart.
Right.
Whereas this one, it's kind of easy to pick it apart.
Yeah. Yeah. They set a very high watermark. So,
Yeah. On the other hand, I've seen quotes from Stephen Moffat where he said about the writer of this story, she really gets Doctor Who. She knows how to write for the show. So maybe we've got more in the offing from her. I think this was Sarah Dollard's first story for Doctor
really?
Who.
Okay.
So maybe, we've seen this with other writers. Their first episode is maybe not so good, and then they really start to hit it out of the park after their second or third. So maybe she'll be back.
Maybe.
I don't think we had any episodes last season written by female authors. This season this is the third, is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Sarah Dollard is the third. So at
That's
least
good. I'm glad
at
they
least they're
responded to that.
broadening.
Yeah, I'm glad they responded to that criticism.
Yeah.
Because it was definitely going around.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not surprised. The sphere of good science fiction, fantasy, adventure authors is not limited to just males, especially in the 21st century.
Still saving the world for me, then?
It's still here, isn't it?
I'm looking forward to how dark it's going to get.
You think so? Mm-hmm. Some people have criticized how dark the
especially
show
with that
is.
in speech that Capaldi had.
Do we think that he's going to keep his promise, though?
Of no revenge.
There'll definitely be some tension there. I think it's going to be real tough for him, and that's why it's going to get real dark. But ultimately, I think so.
Yeah, after Tennant's Doctor set the high water mark for revenge in Family of Blood. Yeah, I can only imagine what Capaldi's Doctor would be capable of. But
Like he could rain hell, just like he said. I think that might be the benefit of having Doctor Who go out at a later time.
darker stories.
And Stephen Moffat seems to have an obsession with death and what death means.
Yeah.
Of course, in his first story, everybody lived. But in this last couple of seasons, with him as showrunner, we've seen a lot of this person is dead. What does it mean? Does it mean they're gone forever?
Right. Well, not only that.
Are we going to have a Force ghost? Come back
when you've got
to guide the Doctor to the light.
When you've basically got a show that's like it's a lot like a vampire fiction, but without the vampire. You've got the Doctor outliving everybody who surrounds him. So I think would naturally provoke all kinds of stories about that.
Well, and I think we've got a Doctor Who universe now, which is a lot like the Star Wars universe, a universe that ostensibly is very, very large, but we keep seeing the same few characters interacting, the same few species, and they keep crossing each other's timelines, which is very similar to the Star Wars canon, which is basically a similar story being told over a series of characters. When the Doctor said, you'll find that it's a very small universe, I blurted out at the television, the way it's being written right now.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's an old tradition with Doctor Who.
Well, what I'm thinking, though, is are they saving the big stuff for the finale? They've been writing a broader universe. We haven't seen a lot of it. The 17th century that we visited with Ishildr in her second incarnation was really cool. We had some characters in there. We had some nice settings. We had some action. Her first outing with the Vikings, that was interesting. Those characters could stand to be fleshed out because they weren't necessarily blank slates.
Right.
Some of them had some personality. When we visited the 38th century in Sleep No More, that was a pretty well-written future.
Yeah, that and, what is it? The Lake Below? No. What is it?
Under the Lake?
Under the Lake. Yeah, that and Under the Lake were both pretty well developed. Could, see exploring those timelines
Right.
a little bit more.
So I'm wondering if we're going to see pieces of these coming back.
Or it could be some big team-up of Ishildr and Missy.
Maybe Ishildr is the hybrid.
Ooh. Yeah.
She's a human who's immortal because of alien technology implanted in her body.
No, I think for a hybrid, it's going to end up being a hybrid where it's part human and part
Prius?
alien.
Oh.
As long as it's not Daleks Take Manhattan Part 2.
It's no device. It's the lurkworms.
Likes, dislikes, things we're looking forward to, things we hope happen.
It can only get better.
It's not that bad that it can only get better.
No, you're right. You're right.
You don't want to jinx it.
The low point of this season is better than last season. That's for damn sure.
Yes. And, I kind of like the fact that Doctor Who is on in the later time slot now, and it enables them to be a little more adult
You know what?
with their themes.
That may be true, but adult or darker is not necessarily better. It never really is.
No, but it opens up a whole new set of ideas that they can
Sure,
tackle.
I like adult storytelling too, but at the same time, you can make stories that are better without resorting, to characters that are having to shout obscenities at each other or
completely irredeemable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
I always stick around for the Next Time trailer. And this time I looked at the Next Time trailer and I said, well, that doesn't tell me anything that I didn't already know.
Okay, here's one thing.
I know the Doctor's going to go through some sort of trial alone, and he's upset about Clara's death, and that's all we saw.
Let me extrapolate that. You're not going to get any new viewers interested if the whole thing is just about the internal struggles of the characters. It's like if we're deeply invested in these characters, it's meaningful. It's really meaningful, It's like a soap opera. But it's also kind of closed. You're not going to attract any new people with an approach like that. They're going to have to open things up, and it's going to have to be a little bit more adventure, maybe?
Yeah.
To get more people watching.
I also wonder what they're doing these days in terms of budget.
Yeah, like I was bringing up.
To me, look like they're kind of pinched this season.
Yeah.
Especially in the last few episodes.
Yeah. The big thing to me is the fact that Old Who was basically written like a stage play. Most of the time, it was filmed like a stage play. They just set the actors loose and pointed some cameras at them, and everything that had to happen right then and there, and that's why they didn't have too many retakes. And it was what it was. Now it's produced like a motion picture, pretty much. It's a one-camera shoot. The effects are anything they can pull off. But I think that a lot of stuff nowadays is storyboarded instead of being properly written and scripted. It's not so much about the characters' interactions between one another. It's more about big scene, big scene, big scene, and stitch them together. It's not about the overarching plot, usually. Plot's like a means to an end.
Do we now know why Clara is so important to the Doctor?
My theory on that is that she is his Jiminy Cricket, okay? She's basically that little voice that he needs. It's just like the cue cards, a kind of a metaphor for that. And he brought them out again in this episode.
Yeah, we haven't seen them since Under the Lake.
Yeah, and it's cute, but it's something that kind of sticks in your mind as something that they've got between them, a little thing that they've worked out, in their relationship. I think it represents their relationship. I think it actually is a very blunt way of showing what she is for him. because his current persona is very brusque and very stoic, and he needs that to relate to people, to relate to his favorite race in the universe.
Doctor 102. Never tell anyone your actual plan.
Okay, I got one parting thought.
All right.
My favorite solo Doctor episode was Deadly Assassin. And my least favorite solo Doctor episode was Waters of Mars. I hope that this coming up one is more like the former and less like the latter.
I hope
That's
so.
fair.
The question is, will the Doctor be reading his own scroll at the beginning of the episode?
Through the millennia, the Time Lords of Gallifrey. Yeah.
Do you really need the words and the voice?
Am I getting paid by the word?
All right, guys. Thanks for coming out, and we'll see you next time.
Excellent.
I'm really good at excising things from my headcanon.
But
Sorry.
you remember Kill the Moon.
I do remember Kill the Moon.
Because we keep bringing it up.
It's a hashtag. It's a hashtag now. Moon egg is a hashtag.
Moon egg. It's replacing shark jump.
Yeah, for an episode that you don't like, it's moon egg now. You were in on the ground floor of that. Aren't you glad?